Let's do my November and December reading wrap up. I'm aware that it is well past November and December, but I physically cannot move on to my end of year recaps and all of that stuff until I get November and December out of the way. So we are doing this video today, and right after this, I'm just gonna go ahead and film my reading wrap ups for the whole year, and I have a ton of videos about that, but we have to get through this one first. This one is a little bit late because I tend to travel quite a lot in the winter. It's basically my off season, and so everything is a bit shifted out of order, but that's a-okay. One last little side note before we get into the books. You're gonna think I'm a hater after this video because November and December were really not good reading months for me. I had a few really good books and the rest were pretty awful, if I'm gonna be honest. For one part of me, I just have not had a really good reading year in general. I guess I'm just not really picking up books that I'm loving. So that's something that I'm actively trying to change for 2025. But also, I was trying to hit my reading goal for 150 books by the end of the year. The year before that, I blew it out of the water. It was 170 something. So this year, because I just wasn't picking up good books and I was just a lot more busy than I normally am, I had only reached 120 books by the start of December. And so I am so competitive with myself that I was like, I'm gonna hit this goal. So a lot of the books I was reading just weren't the best. So I'm gonna hopefully not have that situation again for 2025, but we'll see. All right, let's go ahead and get into all the books that I read in November and December of 2024. I read 11 books in the month of November, and I am like 6 months deep into reading every cowboy romance that exists. And so a lot of these books are part of that genre, starting with Tame the Heart and Rope the Moon by Ava Hunter. This series is wild and like so dramatic and unrealistic. It's like watching a car crash kind of cowboy romance series. They're absolutely crazy. These books don't make sense in their situations. The timelines don't make sense, the locations don't make sense, the characters don't make sense, and really nothing makes sense, but like I can't stop reading them, and the third one is about to come out, so I'm certain I'm going to read that one too. They of course surround these brothers that own a ranch, and their lives are just like way more dramatic than like any TV drama that you'll ever see. It's kind of hilarious. The first book is about this guy. He started the ranch because his wife died 10 years ago and he spiraled, and so he went and he bought a ranch, and his brothers all followed him and they make this home now. But there are these land developers that are coming out and they want to buy the ranch, and so they're like, you better be careful, and they start like actually like illegally sabotaging the ranch and like threatening with guns, and like I'm telling you, it's crazy stuff, right? So he's dealing with this, and meanwhile this girl with a terminal illness is like, YOLO, like I'm tired of you know, living safely. So she's traveling around and she stumbles upon this small town and they get into this huge bar fight, and he's like, I gotta protect this like sweet innocent thing, and he like helps her out of this bar fight, and she's like, if you let me live with you, I'll be your social media manager. And like I'm laughing because it's just absolutely ridiculous how I was explaining how like she would like lay down a map and spin a bottle, like see where she'd go next, and like so she's like flying in the wind, and then she gets to this ranch and she's suddenly like, I want to stay here forever. It's like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like there's way too much cursing that is like normal in conversation, because I think the author is trying to make them seem really tough, but it like makes me laugh every single time. These books are just absolutely ridiculous. The second one is about one of the older brothers, and he is ex-military, and he's like obviously has really bad PTSD because he really did some shit when, you know, when he served, and he had this like little summer fling 6 years ago with this woman in the town, and then she left, and now current day she's fleeing from an abusive ex, and she's pregnant with his baby, and so she's coming back, and this ex-military man is like, I will protect you, and like people are dying left and right, like shit's going down. I'm telling you, these books are so dramatic. The timelines do not make sense whatsoever. You know, there's a lot of shit that's going on, so honestly it is a train cash that I am on the ride for, but they are not good. They're not good. The next book I picked up is Unforgettable by Willow Astor, and I picked this one up because one of the later books is surrounding one of the brothers who's a cowboy, and I cannot start series in the middle. I have to start the first book, and so it's like all these siblings, and it starts out with the daughter, the sister, and she wants to run the family ski ranch or ski resort because the grandpa just died, but the grandpa just put the 4 boys into the will and not her, and so they have to sell the ranch. And first of all, that just pissed me off so much because none of the brothers want the ski ranch, but the daughter does, but she's not part of the will, so it pissed me off so much. So they have to sell it, and they sell it to this guy, and this guy obviously comes in and they hook up because she's grieving about the loss of her snow ranch and she doesn't, you know what's happening. And so they hook up, and then she goes to work the next day and she's like, oh my god, you're the buyer. And there's just like immediate tension. He's immediately like such a golden retriever, just like falling in love with her. And I was like, I cannot handle this book. I literally cannot do it. Like, obviously they're gonna get together, but that's despite the grandpa leaving his granddaughter out of the well, even though she's the one that loved the ski resort the most. Like, I was like, you know what, if this is what this is like, I don't want to get to through 4 books to get to the cowboy romance. You're done. And then I read all 5 books in the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. I know this is like the top grade cowboy romance series that people recommend, and I really enjoy Elsie Silver's writing. I think it is way more realistic and actually fun to read. I just hated most of the books, which is really unfortunate because this is the one that people are saying like it's top tier. And like I said, I can't start things in the middle. I knew that I wanted to read everything by Elsie Silver, so at this point I've already read her first series, so this is like her second series, and I have not yet read her third series. So this series follows a group of brothers and best friends. It's a very found family-esque kind of town. It's very cute. It's a very small town, and they are the older brothers of one of the girls in the first series, so that's how they're all connected. So it follows, each of the books follows a new couple, obviously, and they all surround like kind of, I wouldn't exactly say they're cowboys because only one of the brothers is an actual cowboy, which is kind of disappointing to me because that's what I was going for. The first book is Flawless, and it follows one of the brothers, and he's a bull rider, but he's getting in trouble with the media, and so his media agent is like, I'm gonna send you a babysitter, and it ends up being his daughter, and immediately there's like, wow, you're hot, but like we can't be together, but you're hot. And I'm like, I hate this. I hate this so much. So the setup, not my favorite at all. But the way that Elsie Silver wrote it made it a little bit better. He's like it's very grumpy sunshine. She is absolutely sunshine, but she's also incredibly smart. At least we're told she is. I haven't really seen it that much in the book. But he's super grumpy, but he's a grumpy gentleman in the beginning. So she's like, wait, I'm confused. Like, you have goodness in you. Like, you're kind of nice. So the setup, I was still like kicking and giggling my feet. Hello? Giggling and kicking my feet. Thank you. So I was still like kind of in it, but I was like, this doesn't feel like top tier to me. There were some good scenes, but the ending is just kind of that like large scale, like very public declaration of love that I really hate in books. So this one was not my favorite. The second book is Heartless, and this one is probably my favorite of the whole series. It is about our sunshine girl from the last best friend. She is this wild redhead that is just, doesn't really have an aim in life, and so she's bartending, and she ends up being hired as the nanny for the other guy's older brother, who is the farmer, and he has a young son. And so she is basically the nanny. There's a 10-year age gap, I think, something like that. So she is, just like becoming a stay-at-home mom, basically just being the nanny, and she's having a great time. And there's a lot of tension between the two of them because I actually love them both as characters. She is wild, she's funny, she stands up for herself and her friends. She's a great character. She's by far my favorite, followed immediately by the guy in this book, and he is like a grumpy, like, there's no more love for me, I just want what's best for my son, I want, to make sure the family ranch is going well. So he's one of those silent supporter types, and he turns into like the most like whipped like dirty talking MMC, that one of the best that I've ever read. Like, I absolutely adore him. It's just so unfortunate to me because I don't like children. I don't want children. I hate reading about them. So to have the child be part of so many scenes, and especially towards the end of things that happen, I'm just like, oh, this would be so much better if it was just the two of them without a child. But I know people like that, so like, whatever, we move on. The next one is called Powerless, and I really did not enjoy it. The MMC is basically a family friend that they took in because he was an orphan. He has a really tragic backstory, and now he's a professional hockey player. And the FMC is their cousin. She is a professional ballerina, but she is not having a good go of it. She has a very abusive, narcissistic fiance right now that was set up with her because of her dad. Her dad is equally abusive and narcissistic, and so we start out really not great, but we know that they have a past. They've been, really good friends their whole 10-15 years, however long that they've known each other. They've both secretly been in love with each other this whole time, and I can appreciate the setup, but also at the same time I'm like, girl, stand the fuck up for yourself. Why are you marrying this man? You know that she's awful. Like, do something about it. Our hockey guy literally saves her from the wedding. This happens pretty early on in the book. He saves her from the wedding by literally just running away together, and like instead of her doing it for herself. So her just like not having any agency towards herself at all just really pissed me off. So they run away from this wedding, right? And they spend the entire book just running away from all their problems, running away from hockey, running away from ballerina, dancing, running away from their family, running away from the wedding. And they spend it just like running away together and like having the most tension while being like, I'm so in love with them, but like not taking a step. And it drove me freaking crazy because they were just acting like idiots and acting like, you know, the world wasn't revolving. There are some darker things that are happening in this book, so I somewhat understand why they're running away, but at the same time I was like, you two like are so toxic, like to yourselves and to everyone else around you. Like, I do not enjoy reading about this. They're just both crazy and like obsessed with each other, and I'm like, I don't like this. The next book is Reckless, and when I tell you, I am so disappointed in this book. I saw this couple coming from book one. I'm so excited. The FMC is the kind of cold older sister. Her name is Winter, to the sunshiny female main character of the first book named Summer. So Winter is a nurse. She's a very intelligent, smart woman, and she has been kind of labeled as like an evil ice queen in all the other books from all the other perspectives. And our MMC is the kind of bull rider prodigy, the younger prodigy of our first guy in the first book. So he's a bull rider now. Now I saw them coming from book one and I was so excited. They are both super intelligent, like intellectually, emotionally. Their banter every time they interacted was just 10 out of 10 banter. They just like kept up with each other so well. He is super charismatic and flirtatious. She like shuts down and like pushes him away, but like it was so clear that he can kind of thaw her, and I was just so beyond excited for their book. Like he calls her Tinkerbell because she's so small and like, you know, angry, and so he's just like a walking green flag, just like such a fun character both of them are. Like I can relate to Winter, like just having that kind of love story I was so much looking forward to. So when I read the book, when I tell you that like I wanted to cry because of how the book went, oh my god. All right, this happens really early on in the book, so it's really not a spoiler, but they end up hooking up and she gets pregnant and she reaches out to him via text, and he basically is like, thanks for letting me know. And then a year and a half goes by without any more contact. And so oh, I'm so mad. So most of the book takes place when she has a 9-month-old daughter. She's a single mom, and he comes back into town and he's like, I did not know about this. Like somebody set this up. And so the whole book is him trying to earn her forgiveness and like trying to prove that he's enough for her, and them kind of getting together as a family. And I am just so beyond disappointed. Number one, because like I already said, I do not like children. I do not like reading about children, so that was just already disappointing. But more so it was that I was so looking forward to these two characters kind of growing as individuals first and as a relationship, and then maybe going into a family, because I know that's the ideal, I guess, for a lot of people. So I was really looking forward to them like just as people, like as a couple, but instead we got first them as a family and then as a couple. And I feel like, you know, whatever individual growth that they had came as a result of those two, and that was so disappointing to me. Like I was really looking forward to their story, and so it hurt. I'm really sad about it. And then the last book is Hopeless, and it follows the middle brother. He is basically a Canadian war hero, like a Navy SEAL, but like of the top for Canada. I don't know. And so I was like, you know what? I really enjoy him as a character. Like this book can be really fun. No, it actually was my least favorite of the whole series. He ended up being lost at war, and the whole family was freaking out during the hockey players book, which is totally warranted, but he comes back, he was found, and he's come back obviously a little bit changed. Before he was lost at war, he was a super like funny, charismatic, like really social character, and I loved reading about that. And he's come back now, and obviously from his perspective, he is not that person anymore, and that was really heartbreaking to read about. I know it happens. PTSD was bad for him, so I understand that we're going to go through this kind of character growth, but it was just not enjoyable to read about, because from his perspective, like nothing matters anymore, everything sucks, like there's just no light in life anymore, even though he's surrounded by all of his family and friends, and they have a really found family going in this small town. So that was already just a sad note, but it was really the rest of the book that just brought it down so much for me. Our FMC is over 10 years younger. She is a, hold on, He's 35 and she is a 22-year-old virgin. I hate books that are like that, honestly. She is their neighbor, but she is the littlest sister of all these brothers that are all like the town druggies and drug cartels and like all of this. And so she played the very minor, she was like a very minor inclusion in previous books that I was like, oh no, please no. Like I saw it coming. I was like, please no, please no. But of course it wasn't. By the time I got to the end, it was her. And so he basically steps in and is like, I'm gonna protect you. But he does it in a way that's like kind of stalkery. Like she works at the only bar in town and he goes to that bar because he's, you know, life is meaningless now. And so he realizes that she closes shift. And so he's like, I'm gonna protect her. And so he stayed at the bar all night, every night with her, which I get some people can find kind of cute, but like, no, not for me, not for me. If it was, you know, if it was somebody a little closer in age, then like maybe this would have been fine, but I just do not appreciate that she's 22 years old and she's a virgin. And what's even worse is that she does not even act like a 22-year-old. She acts like a 16 or 17-year-old. They start hanging out outside. She moves onto his property because her older brothers are going crazy. They end up becoming fake fiancés because they have a bet going that if she had his last name, like she'd be treated better by the town. Like it's just, the whole setup is just so outlandish. And so he's like, all right, like I'm gonna teach you about the world. And she's like asking the most innocent questions. Like she is just like really like not with it emotionally, intellectually on a 22-year-old level. She acts like a teenager. And so the fact that it's like a teenager in my brain with a 35-year-old war PTSD, like really troubled guy, I'm like, I don't see it and I do not like it. And even like the smut scenes in this made me cringe so hard. Like they were bad, like bad, some of the worst I've ever read that like traumatized me, I swear. So this book was not it for me and I really struggled to get to the end. So I'm really disappointed that like the best of the best cowboy romance series is this one when I gave them all. Oh man, yeah, not for me. I was horribly disappointed. So after that, I decided that I'm going to take a break from my cowboy romances and I would move into other categories. But don't worry, the disappointment does not stop here. My next book was Bull Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. I have read dozens of Ruby Dixon books. I'm making my way through her whole Rubyverse. Don't ask me why, it's just a completionist thing in my head. I need to read them all. I was really excited for this one because it has nothing to do with the rest of her books, but it's about basically an archaeologist going to archaeology school, but she has to make a deal with one of the faculty members, he's a minotaur, because she needs help getting into the school and he needs help getting through his rut. So for a fun, just like fantasy, smutty, you know, archaeology book, I was like, you know what, this is gonna be a great palate cleanser, this is gonna be a really fun ride. It was not a fun ride. It wasn't at all. It was a full-length novel in which most of it is basically everyone being super sexist and down on our main character because she's a woman, even though she's smarter than literally the rest of them. And the found family is like, okay, like I appreciate them, but like now literally a month and a half later, I couldn't tell you any of the side characters or what they are. They're completely forgettable to me. But what I do remember is that most of the book is them just trying to follow the laws of their society and then being like, wait a minute, our society is super corrupt and we should not be doing these archaeological digs and we should not be giving the power to these people. Like, this is all really bad and messed up. And it's like, duh, archaeology is already bad anyway. And so the book ended up being like this is bad, society's bad, like all this stuff. And I was like, look, I won't lie, I read Ruby Dixon books for the monster smut. Like that is what it is. So when the book is like, yes, she must help him get through a rut, I was like, cool, there's gonna be a lot of like ruttiness throughout the book. Nope, maybe 5 pages towards the end and that was it. And I was like, what the frick? This is not what I picked up the book for. And so I'm really happy. I was on the fence. I almost bought this book because it's really pretty. And I'm really happy I didn't because I will never reread that. It was just not fun to read. I enjoyed the setup a lot, but the way that she wrote it to be more of like an actual fantasy book with like a little bit of smut, I was like, This isn't what I came here for. Next, I read my first T. Kingfisher book, which is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I listened to this, and this was such a fun ride. Like, I was laughing out loud. I think I read it in one day. It was just such a fun, enjoyable experience. Our main character is this very young wizard. She is technically a wizard because she can imbue magic into bread and, you know, make little gingerbread dance and, you know, make loaves not become stale. Like, it's very minimal magic. That is how the magic system works. Everyone has very small little bits of magic. There's a side character who can animate just dead horse bones. So it's like very local little magic systems. So she lives in this community, and she's finding out that people with magic are being systematically eradicated, and there are evil forces on the way. So there's just a lot going on politically. And this book was so much fun until it got to a point where our main character is hiding in an attic for an extended period of time while wanted posters for her and all other magic people were placed out on the street, and people were snitching on their neighbors, and people were disappearing. Does that sound familiar? Because I was reading this and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Why is this suddenly very Anne Frank when I thought this was gonna be a cute little fantasy? So yeah, that really took me out of it. I guess I get it. But I think it was just, like, I saw the parallels already, but when she was just hiding in the attic, it was just like a punch to the face being like, if you didn't get it, like, here's your last chance. Like, do you get it now? And I'm like, okay, I get it. So that really took me out of it. I get that it's probably for younger readers, cause the FMC was a younger reader. But I feel like we're not stupid and we would have gotten it anyway. So having it be kind of a parallel for Nazi Germany was not what I went into the book expecting. So yeah, that took me out of it a little bit, but otherwise I did really enjoy the book. It was laugh out loud funny and an enjoyable experience. I just wish I knew what the author was trying to do for that. I don't know, but I will be reading more of her work. And the last book I read in November was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And I love this book in theory and absolutely not at all in execution. The theory is that our main character wakes up in a new body every day to replay the same day over and over again, kind of like Groundhog Day, in order to try to solve a murder. And so our person needs to wake up in each body every day to get a new, like, puzzle piece to try to solve the murder. And so he has until 7 days to, or 8 days to figure out who did the murder. So in theory, this is a really cool book. The setup is that they are in this mansion, and it's the, you know, a family that has a lot of enemies, and everyone's come to stay, and it's this really cool mansion with really cool grounds. Like, the setup is awesome. Execution, ridiculously terrible, because it took like 100 pages for us to even understand what was happening and to get to the second day. So it was incredibly difficult because his first person that he inhabits, and you kind of get some of the characteristics of these people as he inhabits them. Our first guy is an absolute coward, and he runs away at every possible instance, and he's hiding, and he's like, I don't want anything to do with this. And so we start out with this as our first person, and we're like, okay, like, we don't know what's happening because you don't want to know what's happening. Meanwhile, like, I've read the back of the book, so like, I understand where we're going with this, but like, it took us so long to get there because our first character just wants nothing to do with the murder. So I'm like, okay, this sucks. And then I realized that he was actually one of the best freaking characters because all the rest are awful human beings. When I tell you that one of them is a literal rapist and he tries actively to commit rape on page. One of them is a super fat banker, and the way that the author describes him being fat is just such in a way that was just awful to read. It was just so fat phobic. Like, it was just like, it was so traumatizing to read. Another one is a sells drugs. Another one is, it was just like all these people that are just so beyond terrible. Like, they are just really, really bad con artists and just terrible people. And so the fact that we have to become these people as we go along the story while actively trying to figure out this murder is just, it was awful. It was awful. This book is also like ridiculously long. It is so many pages, and I understand how many details went into this, because in the end the author was like, yeah, and if I changed one detail, I had to go back and change it in every chapter because everything was so intertwined. I was picking up little details, but like when we got to the end, I realized I didn't pick up nearly enough. So there is a really deep, really intrinsically included mystery in this that I thought was really cool, having so many details, but it was just too much. And the people were like awful. They were awful to be like as a reader. It was just bad. So I love the theory that if it was half the length and the people were not like literal convicted felons, it'd be a lot better. All right, so by the end of November, I had read 120 books, which means I had 30 books in December that I wanted to read so that I could hit my reading goal of 150. And so a lot of these books are novellas, or they are books that I wanted to reread to feel something. You'll see why. So a lot of them are kind of short. So I'm gonna go try to be a little faster for December. First up, I listened to The Cloisters, which is a dark academia book, but I just did not have a good time reading. Basically, they are in the cloisters in New York, which is I guess a metropolitan museum, and they are researching the very first tarot deck. And so there is a murder, there is a lot of mystery, so it's very dark academia. I just hated it because our main character was so freaking stupid and couldn't see what was right in front of her eyeballs. Things that we were calling as readers and people on page were calling from like day one, she did not get until it was revealed to her, and it was too late. And I was like, you are an idiot. You do not deserve to be here. So that was just not a super enjoyable experience. It was very dark academia though, so if that's your vibe, maybe give it a try. Next is The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. I bought this on release day and I was really looking forward to it. I really love Erin A. Craig's other work. This is a retelling of Godfather Death, in which a little girl is promised to death because she's a 13th child and her family is like, no more please. So she's promised to Godfather Death on her birth, but he doesn't come and collect her until she is like 13 or 14 years old. And so she's grown up in a family that does not want her, and so finally he comes to collect her, and Godfather Death is like your awkward uncle. It's like, he's not what I imagined him to be, which is fun and it's startling, but he trains her whole life to become the world's best healer. And so she has this magical power that is granted to her from death, that if she looks at someone, she knows exactly how to heal them. And so he taught her how to do the actual healing, and she can, you know, look at somebody and know exactly what caused it and how to help them. And so this starts out as such a cool book. I'm just super disappointed because our main character has no personal agency whatsoever. Basically every move throughout the plot is dictated by Godfather Death, and he's just like not the character I wanted him to be. Until the like maybe 2 or 3 active decisions that she actually makes throughout the book, they are all atrocious and she never learns from them. And so she's just not a fun main character, honestly. And there is a romance in this that just feels so rushed and so out of place that I could not root for them. But it happened anyway. And I was like, I really wanted to love this book so much, but I really didn't. And then my mom and I were going to California for winter, and I wanted to read this before we got there. We are lifelong Disney fans. We used to go to Disneyland on Christmas Day every year, and we were gonna do that again, and we just did. It was amazing. So I wanted to read this before we got going. It is just, it walks through the park, and it talks about Walt's like hands-on process for each part of the parks. Obviously it's the original Disneyland, so it's like Frontierland and Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, and it's so much fun. I have been to his hometown. I've seen his hometown museum. I've seen some of the places that, you know, he has touched over life, and so this was like a really nostalgic, really informative book for me, and I really enjoyed it. And then thank goodness for Ally Carter, because I finally had a 5-star read. This is The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year, and it is basically if Knives Out were a Hallmark movie. This book It's pretty short, and it's my favorite Christmas book that I have ever read. Basically, these two are both mystery writers. She writes more cozy mystery and he writes more like action-packed mystery, and they are invited by the fictional Agatha Christie, right? So basically like the most prolific mystery writer of their time, made headway for the genre itself. She invites them, they're both American, but she invites them to come over to her castle in the UK for Christmas because neither of them have plans. And so they get to this castle and it's filled with all of her family members and her closest friends, and they are in this mansion and they're like, oh my god, we're at, I don't remember the fictional name, but Agatha Christie's house. Like, what's gonna happen? And then Agatha Christie goes missing, and they're like, oh no, we have to solve the mystery of her disappearance. And so they spend the book trying to figure out who did it, while also actively avoiding people that are trying to kill them as well. They're like, what is happening? They start out being rivals, we're told from her point of view, as rivals because she thinks that he doesn't take her seriously and that he doesn't know her at all. But it turns into just one of the best banter, the best like wholesome, like I love them so much. Their relationship is just absolute goals. Once we get over the initial misunderstanding, they work together as a team. And as a couple that I could root for the rest of my life. Like, I will be rereading this probably every year. Thank you so much, Riley Carter. I love this book. And then I listened to The Hedge Witch of Foxhall, and I was so excited for this because it is a Welsh-inspired fantasy book in which our main character is a Welsh witch. Basically, she is, she has little powers that she gets from the forest. You know, she collects dried leaves and nuts and whatever, and like speaks, you know, these really poetic spells. And so I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be like the coziest fantasy, like it's gonna be Welsh. I'm so excited for this. And then I hated the whole book. I thought it was gonna be like a fun, like bring magic back to the land kind of book, but instead it was our main girl is a self-outcast. Her family is like right there and they're like, come inside, and she's like, no, I'm feral. I'm like, okay. There is immediate animal death on page that is destroyed me, honestly. And then it's actually a love triangle between her and the two princes. And one of them is a little odd in the way that he loves her. It's very odd. And so they are basically, the princes are competing to get the throne. It's one of the princes doesn't actually want it, but he has to compete. One of them really wants it, but he shouldn't have it. And so basically they're like, all right, we have to bring magic back, but like also at the same time they don't want magic back. Like, it's like this back and forth, and I hate everyone, and everyone is against magic and everyone's for magic, and it's just like, oh my god, I'm tired of going in circles and I hate everyone and I'm not rooting for anyone. Like, just go back to the woods, everyone. And then I listened to The Nightmare Before Christmas. And wouldn't you know it, I was disappointed again. I really wanted this to have Guardians of the Galaxy vibes, in which it follows a bunch of kids of like holidays. So Santa Claus's son, like the Prince of Christmas, like the daughter of Easter, you know, all these holidays. And so I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be so cool. It's going to be like Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's a romance between the Prince of Christmas and the Prince of Halloween. It's gonna be so good. It wasn't. I really did not enjoy it at all. It turned into mostly like political book that literally made me hate Santa Claus, because Santa Claus is trying to take all the power from all the other holidays so he can have the most power of all the holidays, because when humans celebrate your holiday, they get more power. And so it's now these younger people that are being forced to vie for both the Prince of Christmas and the Prince of Halloween have to vie for the Princess of Easter's hand. And it makes no sense whatsoever as to why, except for the Santa Claus wants to just control all of them, I guess. It's so political in the stupidest way that made me literally hate the holidays. Like, give me more reasons to not like Christmas, come on. And the love between the Prince of Christmas and the Prince of Halloween is just so instant and like randomly deep, and they're all just really stupid. Like, no. I think that if we had just left out all of the political stuff of Santa Claus literally trying to take over the world, this book would have been really cute. Like, if we had dedicated the pages to just these princes like getting to know each other and like sharing their holiday festivities with each other, like this would have been a 10 out of 10 book for me. Like, it would have been so much fun. But instead you just had to have Santa trying to take over the world, and the romance was therefore like on the back burner, and I hated it all. So at that point, I was like, please just, I need something good. So I re-listened to Mistletoe by Kimberly Lemming. She writes the Miss Meathap series, and this was, even though it's a novella, it was my favorite of the whole series. And I was like, you know what, I just need to feel something. So I ended up re-listening to it, and it's basically a fake dating. She goes into the woods to try to plea to the fox demon of the woods because her father's a blacksmith, and the fox made all of the swords and stuff talk, and so her father's business is not going well. And so the fox is like, okay, I'll take the curse away if you come with me for a week to this like monster retreat, right? We're all back in the world, everyone's getting together, so like you come and be my mate so that the dragon will grant me like, you know, like this is my official land status. And so he's like, all right, I need you to come with me for a week. And so it's fake dating, and they are already just immediately like, they're both like, screw it, I'm down bad for you, can we just like get together a little bit? And the banter is so good. The fox demon is so funny, he's so sly, like I love him as an MMC. Our main girl too is so strong, and she's hilarious, and I absolutely adore her. This book is not long enough. I need it to be a full-length romance novel because I just adore them, and that was like, oh, it reset me, it was so good. And then I listened to Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood, and this is one of her shorter books that I didn't even know was coming out. I just found it on Libby, and so I listened to it, and basically it's these two rival video game companies are going to have to work together for this big new project, and so they're like, all right, screw everyone, cancel all your plans, we're all going to this ski lodge for 1 week, and we're gonna get together, damn it. And so it's our main girl in one company and our main guy in the other company, and a while ago they met for the first time, and he's like immediately really rude to her, and she's like, what did I do? And they meet again, and he's rude to her again, and she's like, seriously dude, what did I do? And they keep meeting, and he's like rude to her and just like does not give her any attention. He just keeps walking away, and she's like, I guess I have a rival, like what the frick? And she doesn't understand. And so they get to this ski resort, and she's the head of her team, he's the head of his team, and they realize they have to work together, but she's like, dude, I don't get it, what did I do to you? And so I won't lie, I hated him at first because like the ignoring her, the being rude to her, like what the fuck, dude. But once I got his point of view, I was like, oh man, okay, I kind of get it. Still not a great excuse, but I kind of get it. And because it's Ali Hazelwood, it was just written so well, and by the end I was rooting for them so hard. I was like, gosh dang it, like you didn't have to kick me in the beginning, like I would have loved it however you wrote it. So it didn't start out great, but because it's Ali Hazelwood, she saved herself. And then I read The Bear and the Nightingale. This has been on my TBR for years, and I've wanted to read it every winter for like 4 years, and I finally did it. And I have mixed feelings about it, of course. This is very heavily influenced by Russian folklore, and around the 14th, 15th, 16th century in the Russian wilderness, basically the town that abuts the really dark, scary forest up in Russia during the winter time. And the story basically follows our main girlie and her family, and her dad is equal to a duke, in which he has control over the lands, and everyone is below him, and they all come up to him, and he's portrayed as a good guy, like a good leader, and people trust him and respect him. And so she has this ability to see demons that nobody else can see, and she's just like, they're little spirits, and she she's talking to the house spirits and the water spirits and all this. And so she kind of grows up as like a wild feral child because she spends all of her time outdoors, and all of her older siblings are like, somebody get this girl, like, oh my god. And so as we go along, it takes place over many years in which, the father has to remarry because the mother died in childbirth for this last girl because she wanted her so badly. And, we marry off the older siblings, things happen along the way. And so he remarries this new lady, and she also sees demons, but she is terrified of them, and she gets really religious, and she's like, we have to get rid of them. And so she basically rallies the people with the help of this really evil priest, and they're like, we must get rid of the demons. And so it's about this little girl, and she's living in this time period in which Christianity is really going against the pagan beliefs at that time, and there's a lot of you know, crap that happens along the way. So I really loved the Russian folklore aspects of it. I really loved our main character. I thought she was really unique and really awesome as a character. She really stood up for herself over time, and really did the best that she could against like the society that was against her. But as somebody who really does not like religion and really does not enjoy reading about it, I was really upset with how heavily religion was in this, and how much it influenced the plot. Like I didn't like it, even on the back it's really not there at all, but it was like large pages dedicated to the priest and like sermons, and I was like, I'm uncomfortable reading this because I'm uncomfortable by religion, and so that really sucked. And then towards the end, I guess throughout we kind of see that our main girlies having these interactions with these like, they're very clearly like older, deeper, more powerful spirits. One of them is evil and one of them is good. I guess he's kind of neutral, and the evil one is growing in more power as our main girl is getting older. And so towards the end, like I think she has like a little bit of a romance with the neutral one. I really cannot be sure. Like I literally cannot tell you if it was or not. Like I don't know. And so part of me really wants to read the next two books, even though this felt like a standalone. Like I just want to know what's gonna happen because I'm confused. I think she's confused. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm not in a big rush to pick up the next ones, but I think I will eventually. And then I hopped on a plane to San Francisco and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm up in the air for a few hours. I need something good, please. And so I didn't get to my reread of What the Hex in October, and so I decided to do it on the plane. And this is basically a little witchy rom-com by Alexis Daria, and it's these two academic rivals from high school are coming back to their magical witchy island off the coast of Miami for a wedding, and they get back and they realize that all of their family members have been possessed by demons, and so these two need to fake be engaged so that they can solve get the demons out of there. And it's so good. I love both the characters so much. Added to the list of novellas that I wish were full-length novels. Oh my god, this is a laugh out loud witchy rom-com that I wish everyone would read. And here starts the long list of Christmas rom-coms that I read as I tried to get to the day of Christmas and the end of the year in my reading goal. Starting with My December Darling by Lauren Asher. This is my first Lauren Asher book, and unfortunately it might be my last because I did not enjoy it. Basically they're two doctors that come back to her small town because her sister is getting married and she's the maid of honor and he's the best man, and I did not enjoy it. Basically I think they've been in love with each other for a long time, or they were enemies or something. I don't know, very typical tension, I guess, but they immediately basically like get set up and they get together, and all I know is that they both love Legos and they do Legos together, and that there's on page baby death. So, but then thank goodness for Love Light Farms, I did my reread. I really wanted to read it before I left, so I didn't get to it though, so I ended up listening to it while I was in California. And B.K. Borison is one of my favorite contemporary romance authors ever. I love this series. I have decided that I'm going to reread each book in its season. Each book takes place over a different season. There's 4 of them. They all take place at Love Light Farms in a small town in Maryland, in which it's a Christmas tree farm owned by her, and she is just trying to make it go better. So this first book is about her and her longtime bestie of like 10 years. She has a social media influencer coming to try to save the farm. Basically, they're going under a little bit. And so she put in her form being like, hey, yeah, my boyfriend and I bought it together. And so she was basically speaking into existence that our guy would be her pretend boyfriend for when the social media influencer comes. And so they pretend to fake date while the social media is here. And they very quickly realize that they cannot fake very well, and they are indeed actually in love. And the whole town is so excited for them. It is hilarious. And this is small town at its finest. They literally have a phone tree in which when something happens, everyone calls each other. The found family in this is so real. It is laugh out loud. He is book boyfriend for real. She is such a great, realistic, relatable character. Like, this whole series is just a 10 out of 10 for me. You can read it really any time of year, but I like reading this one in the winter. The next one is called Faking Christmas, and I really like this one in theory, but in actuality, I didn't like it as much. So it's these two rival English teachers in this school. Our main girl really likes to teach the classics. She is really like traditional, like students must do this. And our main guy is new to the school and he's teaching Harry Potter and he's watching movies and he's having the kids have fun, you know, trying all these new things. And so from our main girl's perspective, he's, you know, ruining literature. He's ruining, you know, the classroom experience. Fun fact, I actually went to college to become a high school English teacher. It was my dream for like 10, 15 years that I was going to do that. I got my master's of education and everything. It didn't work out for me though, that my business just did better. So I am a photographer now, but I went through the whole thing of becoming an English teacher. I just didn't actually teach. So reading this from her perspective, I was like, girly, I don't agree with you. Like, I agree with him. You have to make the classics relatable to them, but you also have to include things that are from their modern day canon. And so her just like hating him from the jump just because he was making the class fun and relatable made me really, really dislike her, because that's just, you know, teachers that are like that, they have trouble relating their students to the work. I did my best, you know, making the classics fun and relatable while also including things from modern day. Like, you literally have to, otherwise the kids will not give a crap. And so I was on his side from the beginning, so I just was not enjoying reading from her perspective. Because she's like that like for the rest of her personality, and I was like, look, I'm like that for the rest of my personality, but because we disagree on this, like, I don't like you. So anyway, they both end up going to this small Vermont, I think it's a ski lodge or just like a cute little bed and breakfast, like up in the snow in Vermont, because her family is awful and she's a pushover. And so she goes there on vacation to get out of seeing her mom's new husband. And it turns out that his family owns the lodge. And so they end up being there, and she is trying to get her family off her back. So she's like, yeah, I have this boyfriend, his name is, and then in a moment of panic she says his name. And so when he arrives, the family is like, oh my god, like, you're here. And they're like, oh my god, you're here. And so they end up fake dating, and I actually really enjoyed them as a couple once they got over, you know, all the other stuff. But what I really enjoyed about this was that, like, the plot of them getting to know each other and having fun was so cute. So at this ski lodge, they have a bingo, and each of the squares is filled with a winter activity. So it's like build a snowman, you know, roast marshmallows. It was like all these really cute, wholesome activities, and they're like, all right, whoever gets all of them knocked off is entered to win a Caribbean vacation. I don't understand how Vermont can, our family can, that owns the lodge, can afford this Caribbean vacation, but oh well, that's the only thing. And so they're like, oh my god, like, we have to do it. And so the whole time they're there pretending to date, getting to know each other, doing these really wholesome Christmas activities and being really competitive. And so I loved that. I loved it so much. So give and take for that book. And then I read Wreck My Plans, and I DNF'd it at 70% because I couldn't take it anymore. Basically, he's 10 years older and the best friend of her older brother, and the whole time they are like on a Christmas holiday together, and the whole time they're like, we can't be together, you're like an older brother to me, but they're like having hard eyes at each other and lusting over each other the whole time. And I couldn't take it anymore. It was just that on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, being like, we can't be together, and then they're just like staring sexually at each other. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then I read A Newport Christmas, and the setup for this book was positive to me. Basically, both our main characters are recently divorced, and his sister is getting married in Newport, Rhode Island at one of the mansions there. I love Newport. I've been a few times. I absolutely love touring the mansions and walking around the town and doing all of that. And so he's gonna be there for his sister. And she is a social media influencer who's a baker, and so she makes really cool things with gingerbread. And so the sister hires her, she flies her out from LA to make these gingerbread houses for the centerpieces for wedding. I'm a wedding photographer, and I've never seen anything like that before. I think it'd be cool. Flying someone out from a different state, like directly across the country, is kind of wild, but we're meant to believe that her and her fiance are pretty loaded, so I guess. So anyway, so they're there, and she has to be there for weeks, I guess, to make these gingerbread houses, and the sister is like trying to set them up. So she's like, hey, brother of mine, you need to show our friend around. And so they're like, okay. And so it takes place over a few weeks, I guess. The timeline is kind of confusing, in which they're like going around seeing all the Newport sites, while also our girl is like working day and night trying to get these gingerbread houses done. And so it's like, it's kind of confusing, the timeline. Our main guy falls for her immediately. Like he's immediately down bad for her. But I could not see why, because our main girl is not a functioning adult. She has no emotional capacity beyond what's immediately in front of her, and she is just dumb. She's not a smart human. Literally none of the choices she makes in life are that of a matured human being with a full brain, and I struggled to get through this book because she's so stupid, and he was just immediately down bad for her for no reason whatsoever. I only gave this book a 3-star because it was taking place in Newport and included Newport activities that I love to do. Next is A Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood, another little novella by her that I didn't know existed. So in classic Ali Hazelwood style, our MMC is down bad for her immediately and the whole time. Actually, in contrast to every other book, he lets our main girl know it the whole time. So he is her little brother's best friend, and their whole lives he's been like, I'm in love with you. And so he's like obsessed level of in love with her his whole life. And so they have the story is mostly told through flashbacks of all these times that he's like professed his love to her, being like, but I'm not ready for, like, I'm not good enough for you yet, so we have to wait. And so I'm like, huh? So in the modern day, they are both home in their hometown, and she walks over to his house because she needs to borrow some kitchen utensil, and then the snow gets so bad that he's like, I'm not letting you leave. And so this is them like staring at each other and reminiscing about all the times that he wasn't ready for her. And so basically the whole story is told through these flashbacks, and we're led to believe that now he is ready for her. And it's truly like obsessive love, but it's written by Ali Hazelwood, so like it's not bad. Next is Resting Scrooge Face, and this is actually second chance romance. They are from this small town, and they dated, and then they broke up when she left to go to college and like live her big city dreams. But now she's back in town, and he has become basically the town Scrooge, and she's the town Scrooge. And so they end up writing anonymous letters to each other, being like, I'm lonely this holiday season, like here are all the things that I miss, like Christmas isn't the same anymore. And it's their small town mailman who is taking their anonymous letters and delivering to each other. So he's playing total matchmaker. It was pretty cute. It was pretty small though. Next is Holiday Hideaway, and I DNF'd this after a point because I was like, I cannot handle this situation anymore. Essentially, she is recently divorced, and the husband got everything because she did not stand up for herself, and so she is a like real estate agent kind of thing, and so she's squatting in all the empty homes, all the empty vacation rentals, and so she is in this vacation rental when the owner pulls up, and so she's like hiding in the attic with her dog, right, with like the groceries that she had just bought. And so he comes home, and it's actually his uncles or whatever that just died, and so he's there being like, I gotta take care of this before I can go back. And she's like listening to all of his conversations and all this, and so he's on the phone with his girlfriend, and basically the girlfriend is a total like manipulative, very narcissistic person, but he's on the phone with her because she's hot or something, and so she's like, you need to come back here so you can go to this party with me, like I need you there so you can propose to me, kind of thing. Like it's like, whoa, okay. And so it just starts out with that, and like she is trying to escape the house while he's not there, and she tries to leave with her car, but her car won't start, and so he ends up towing her car, and she's like hiding in the attic, and I'm like, this is fucking crazy. And they're both so stupid because like she'll leave her toothpaste out, and he'll call her because she's a real estate agent. He goes, wow, you guys really thought of everything, toothpaste and Cheez-Its. And I'm like, you're both so stupid, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And honestly, that was my last straw for Christmas books. So even though it was like December 23rd or something, I was like, I'm done, I'm out. And that's when I picked up a re-listen of That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. This is one of the laugh out loud books that I actually read in January of last year. I really love Kimberly Lemming's writing style. It's hilarious. Every character in here is like really strong with their personalities and like strong in general. They have such fun adventures in here. It's just a bunch of mayhem. It is just like look at this. He's a dragon shifter, and they have to go on this quest to defeat this evil witch kind of lady. It's a fun book. It's really short. I listened to it in like 2 days. It was such a fun throwback. This is like my I hate everything, I need to reset my palette kind of book. And then I listened to When You Least Expect It, and this book is one of the slowest burns I've ever read, and not in a good way. Basically, she is her divorce lawyer. Yep. Her ex-husband was our main girlie's old coworker, and he was an awful human being, and so they butted heads a lot. And so when they are getting divorced, she takes on her case, and so she's, you know, being a divorce lawyer for her old coworker. And our main girl is pretty much immediately down bad for her, but she's like, I have to hide it. And so we think that our you know, recent divorcee is probably straight, we don't know. She's not really acting towards it at all. And so the book takes place over a year of our main girlie like being so down bad for her and being like, I have to get over these feelings, I have to get over these feelings. And I love a good slow burn, but I hate it when it's done like this, where it's just over time of like our main girlie being so in love, the other one's just like acting like a friend kind of thing, and like nothing happens actually in the plot. Our main girlie is our you know, our recent divorcee is a single mom now, and so she's just like getting to know her kid, and they have all of these like moments together over time, but it's told over a year, so that they just felt like it dragged on for so long. Like obviously it's a romance novel, I know they're going to get together in the end, but we just had no indication of that until like the very end, and I was like, oh my god, I felt like I just wasted 5 years of my life on this book. And then for some incredibly stupid reason, I decided that I needed to read like 10 books in 5 days, and the only way I was going to do that is to go through all of the books that I got for free on my Kindle off of Kindle, like Stuff Your Kindle Days. And every book I read from this was a mistake. The first of these offenders is called Branded, and I was like, wow, cowboy romance, this might be good. She is a rising junior in college in California, and she's like, I don't want to go home for the summer, I need to figure out something to do. And so she goes to a bar, and our cowboy sees her from across the bar and is like, that's my wife right there. No reason, just love at first sight. Hadn't even spoken to her yet. So he goes up to her and immediately fumbles the bag because he comes on way too strong, of course. And so she's like, back off. And the next day she sees an ad for a maid for a local ranch. She's like, perfect, I can do this and I can pay my rent and I don't have to go home. And so she goes to the ranch to have an in-person interview, and she opens the door, and who was there but the cowboy from last night? And he goes, you're hired. And she's like, I haven't even interviewed yet. And he goes, I don't care, you're hired. She's like, okay, well, I'm not sure about this. And he goes, here is an egregious amount of pay. I don't know how he's affording this, but here is all the money, and also you have to live with me. And she's like, okay. And so she moves in, and within a week they're like in love. So it wasn't good. Next is a book called Truth or Dare. I should not have opened it based on that title, and yet I did anyway. I'm gonna tell you the whole plot. You do not need to read this book. Basically, our main girlie has an older brother, or a twin or something, I don't know. But her brother and all of his friends bully her relentlessly throughout all of high school. And apparently she has a crush on our main guy because he is the least mean of them all. A very high bar for her. And she's friends with his older sister, and so one night they're all hanging out at his house, and he finds his sister's phone, and so he's like, oh my god, like, this is gonna be so fun, let's mess with her to all the friends. And he texts her Truth or Dare, and this is going to be a recurring theme. He texts her Truth or Dare, and she's like, truth. And he texts her saying, who do you have a crush on? And she's like, don't be weird about it, but your younger brother. And all the friends are like, ooh, and he's like, uh-oh. And so he shuts it down. He's like, all right, gotta go. He's like, you know, why? Well, he asked, he's like, why do you like him? And she's like, well, he's the least mean, but I know he's like a tortured poet's soul. Like, I know he's artistic, and he's got better in him. And so he's like, all right, guys, we gotta stop bullying her. And so she goes on thinking that she told his older sister that she likes him, but meanwhile he has known this whole time. And so they go the rest of their high school days without bullying her. Wow, it's fixed. And so then we go off to college, and they go to separate colleges, and she goes to a writing program and starts writing these books, and he goes to an art school and he starts making those paintings, but she writes him into all of her stories. He is her muse, and he pays her she is his muse. And so they go throughout all of college and they are basically just like making art for each other. And then by the end of their college careers, they're both outstandingly successful, and so they go on to their professional lives beyond successful in their worlds. She sneaks into an art show of his so that she can see, and she discovers one of the paintings of her, and she's like, oh my god, does he feel the same? And he sees her there but doesn't say anything, and he reads her published work, and he's like, oh my god, this is our story. And so she texts him secretly and is like, truth or dare? And he goes, who is this? And she's like, just answer the question. And so for 2 years they text anonymously. She knows it's him, and they're just like saying truth or dare all the time. They're just getting closer and they're becoming friends, and they're falling in love over text. And then finally after 2 years she goes, I have a confession, it's me. And he goes, I've known the whole time. I cannot believe I read that book, but it's okay because none of the rest of these are better. Next is Signal 33, Finding Zoe. Our main girly is a plus-sized girly, and she opens up her own plus-size clothing shop. And the townspeople, some of the women are like, finally, a shop for us, until this skinny woman comes, and she's like, you better close up shop or you're gonna have things coming to you. And the lady is like, our girly is like, who are you? Like, what the frick? And then pretty soon, like, her window gets smashed, and like her shipments are mysteriously gone, and our girl is like, man, all this bad luck happening to me. And then, meanwhile, the fire department gets called every time, and so these fire departments come, and one of the firefighters is like, who is that? And it's like love at first sight for him. And so they start dating, and they get it on pretty quick. And of course, at some point, her apartment is above the shop, and it is set on fire. Of course. And so he has to come and save her. And we're just building up to this the who did it the whole time, obviously, and we just take a complete different avenue towards the end. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I regret reading that. Next, I regret reading even more. It's called Totally Spooked, a shifter speed dating romance. I don't know why I did this to myself. So basically in our world, women like me, young and single and unattached, found out about the existence of shifters and set up speed dating romances so that we can find our shifter mates. Basically, for the 5 human ladies that signed up for tonight's speed dating round, hundreds of shifters have showed up in hopes of getting their mate. The men are let in one by one, blindfolded, and they get like 90 seconds with each girl, and apparently they know on like immediately when they're in the presence, like they just feel it. And so our main guy goes in that we're following, and the first 3 are just like coming on too strong for him, and he's like, no, I want a gentle woman. And so finally, like the last or the second to last lady, he goes in, he just knows immediately that's his mate right there. And within 90 seconds, she has to claim him as her mate, otherwise he gets kicked out. And so things get on really fast because apparently she feels it too, and she claims him as his mate. And so then we go the whole time, and of course he is a billionaire with a remote house on the cliffs, and so they want to continue making these, she wants to continue making these speed dating events because that's how she found her mate, and now she's so happy, but apparently they're illegal, and so this is them figuring out, how to make more of these under the radar, and so they have to go on these, I don't know, these little adventures, I guess. And everything was fine until he shifted, and I cannot for the life of me find it hot when a shifter turns into a fruit bat. I am not even kidding with you. He is a literal freaking fruit bat. At some point he shifts and he flies up to her and he holds onto her shoulder, and she's holding him like this, and she goes, oh, you're so cute. How am I supposed to find that hot? The smut scenes after that, where it's just too many tendencies of a fruit bat, I was like, what? That was so freaking stupid. I understand that she was trying to do something out of the normal, and it's technically like a Halloween book, I guess, but oh my god, I'm gonna think about that for the rest of my life unwillingly. And then it just kept going because the year wasn't over yet. I hadn't hit 150. I read Earl's Prize Curves. I am a connoisseur of historical romance. I love Regency romance. I read a ton of it. So I was like, oh wow, maybe this one won't be that bad. It was bad. Our main girlie is plus sized and she is a total human pushover because her parents had her when they were old, so now they are very old and she's just taking care of them. She's basically their in-home caretaker. But the dad is like, you know what? I'm gonna sell you off to one of my buddies, one of my octogenarian buddies, so that you can be his wife and you can take care of him and us. And she's like, I don't want to do that, but okay. Yeah, so she is resigned to a life of being married to an 80-year-old something, and she's something 25 or something, and taking care of all three of them. And so she has two best friends, they're twins, and she goes out with them to a ball and she's like, this is my fate. And then her best friend's hot dad comes in and he's like, and so she's like, well, I've resigned myself to a fate of no passion. And so she reads basically a smutty book and gives it to the twin daughters, and the dad is like, I don't think so. And so he takes the book and he reads it and he goes, damn, she's got some fire and some passion. And she's like, I don't know how it got to this point, but she was like, I need you to show me some passion before I resign myself to a life without it. And so he's like, no, but okay, let's go to my mountain cabin for a week. And so they run away together for a week. And they get it on, and he's all about it, and she's all about it, and there's passion. Wow. And then they go back, and she's like, I wish he would propose. And her best friends have no idea this is happening either, by the way. And so they go back, and our dad, our whole ass man, is like, I can't live without you anymore, like I'm gonna miss you so much. And they get caught out on the balcony together, and it's the parents and her husband to be, they're like, oh, she's no longer pure, and she's like, yeah, and I'm in love with him, and her best friends are like being like, you're what? And the dad is like, yes, I will marry her. The end. I do have to give it to her though, because she from the very beginning was like, I don't want kids because I've been taking care of my parents my whole life and I don't want to have to do that for my own kids. And he's like, I've already had kids, because they're her age. So he's like, I don't want any more. And so therefore they're perfect for each other. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this one more chance. And I read The Ice Duchess, which is another Regency romance that I got for free. She is basically deemed the Ice Duchess because she was sold off to an older man for marriage, and then he died. And so now she's a duchess, and she started a school for teaching girls how to basically maneuver their marriage contracts so that they're like not in a terrible marriage. Like they, you know, get themselves funds set up, they get themselves education and their children education and all of this. So she's doing a good thing, right? It goes downhill from there. So her older brother died, and the older brother's best friend was higher up in the peerage, so he didn't need a job, but he really liked geology, so he would be out in the field. And so all of his peers were like, you have a job? Like, what the frick are you doing? And so when she got married, or right before she got married, he left the country. Now, they had both kind of been having feelings towards each other before the marriage, but he chickened out and he left for like 10 years. And then the brother died while he was away, I think. And so now after 10 years, he comes back, right? She's now a widow, and he comes back and he's like, I loved you all along. And she's like, I loved you all along, but I don't want to get married because like I've already felt the chains of marriage and I don't want this anymore. And he goes, pretty please? And she goes, okay, chain me up. Like, the fuck, girl? She started out so strong, being like, fuck all the men, power to the women, let's figure it out. And then immediately grovels for this man who left her behind. It's even a plot point in which she's like, why didn't you ask me to marry you instead of me having to marry this old guy? And he goes, I wasn't ready. Sir, who gives a fuck? You abandoned her for 10 years to marry an old man, and now that it's like good enough for you, you're coming back and you want to marry her. And she's like, okay. I was so mad at her for that. And at that point I was like, you know what? I am done with these books. I'm gonna leave behind these stuff your Kindle Unlimited Days things. And I can't take anymore. I cannot take anymore. So then I read Barbarian's Treat, which is another Ruby Dixon book. It's a little Halloween tiny little novella that takes place in like the society that they built up. I meant to read it back in Halloween time, but I didn't get to it. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it now. I know it's short, it's gonna get me towards my goal. So I read it. It was cute. Heavy on the children because that's just what that universe is, but whatever, it did what it was. And then finally, with only 3 books to go of the year, I read Legends and Lattes. And I am so far behind on this, and I'm sad about that because I loved this book. It is exactly what everyone has said it was. It is a cozy fantasy in which our main girly is an orc, and she sets up the very first coffee shop in this town. Nobody knows what coffee is, and she just collects all these people towards her. You know, she has a builder that helps her build it. She collects this baker who is really cute, this tiny little rat thing, and then she collects the coolest barista who like helps make the place a home. And the whole story is her just like being like, I'm done with my battle days, I want like a new life. And like her setting this up is just so incredible, especially when her old life is trying to pull her back in. You know, there's conflicts, there's people from her past coming out, there's things that like she's like, do I need to turn back to violence for this? But she's actively like trying to avoid that. She wants to have this new life, and I really respect that, and I love it. There is like a tiny bit of romance in there, and it's just so wholesome. It is such a good book. And then I didn't realize this when I was listening to it, but there's actually another mini novella at the end of it, so I counted it as 2 books. It's called Pages to Fill, and it is her backstory of how, you know, the adventure she was on and how she discovered coffee for the first time, and it was really wholesome. It was a cute little short story that did exactly what it needed to. And then my last book of the year, I listened to When the Tiger Comes Down the Mountain. This is the 2nd book after The Empress of Salt and Sorrow, I believe, and it is such a good series. The first book I read, I really didn't understand what was happening until I had like listened to it like 3 or 4 or 5 times, but they're really short. Like the listening time is 2 hours, and I listen to them a little slower than double speed, but basically it is our non-binary kind of historical archiver, and they are going around listening to important stories and making sure that it's written down in history. And in this book, our archivist is going through the forest with an elephant and a guide, and they're going through the forest when they are surrounded by tigers. Now, these tigers are actually magical tigers in which they can also change into women, and they're very long-lived and they're very cunning and very smart. And so our archivist is trying to get out of the situation, trying to talk them out of it, because our tigers are like, we're gonna eat you, and our archivist is like, wait a minute, let me tell you a story, like let's make sure that your stories are straight, like let's, you know, get this down in the history books. And so the story is told of the one of the most famous tiger shifters, I guess, and her love story with a human. And so it's our archivist telling the story and the tigers interrupting, being like, you humans tell it wrong, this is how we tell it. And so the whole story is a story within itself. And it's like the same with the last one. And it's just so beautifully done. It is written so lyrically that I felt like I was in that cave with them listening to this story, and like my life was in danger too because the tigers were right there ready to eat me. It's just told so well, and the non-binary rip is fantastic. And that is finally all of the books that I read in November and December. It was quite a lot because I was trying to hit that reading goal. Stupid reading goal. So yeah, so the next few videos that I'm going to share are some from California, and then finally my like end of year wrap up videos. I have a few coming out of where I very much faster, I promise, go through all the books that I read in 2024, and then I'm going to tier rank them, and then I have a few more. I have a reading wrap up video. I have a few more end of year videos coming. I know it's no longer the end of the year, but oh well. Well, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.